chat rooms live. Hi. I'm still on the phone. I'm still recruiting. I'm doing a multi-screen recruitment. You made a Twitch just for me. Yay. I love it. All right. Okay, I'm hanging this one up now. I love that I got my live on TikTok restricted for yelling at someone for being stupid about imperialism. I was like, you're dumb and you're stupid. And I was like, restricted for bullying. I am going to bully everyone about American imperialism. We do not have time for this shit. Yeah, it was just now. I'm like, well, did they deserve to be bullied? Maybe they did. Hydrating. Hi, good morning. Now is the time to bully people for their support of the American empire. I don't care how leftistly they do it. You can't leftistly support the American empire. This should not be controversial. First time chats. Autistic Baddie 3. Hi. I can already tell you're my type of people. Sugar Wisty. Hi. And Panavs. Hi. We're here to bully people. You know what? So do I. Winadapu. I also suck at Twitch. You just got here from TikTok? Yeah. Everybody, more hydrate. We'll be hydrating in solidarity. Water to you all. One more. Here from TikTok, loose goose, yes. Oh, another. Okay, 136 people, nice. So I guess today, my plan was to, I don't know, do we want to do more stuff about Venezuela? Do we need to finish anything up? We had talked about the 2024 elections, which I think was really good. You made an account just for this, Seth. Yes. We could read more. I need some input from the chat. Do we want to... You've been exploding at your mother? I mean, it's hard not to get mad. Sometimes you're like, fuck it, I'm pissed. Oh, Gramsci. Let's start with the second text of Gramsci. Oh, you read Principles of Communism last night. Starburst, yay. What did you think? Do you have any questions? We can do a casual talk while people still filter in about it if you had any questions. Some stuff on imperialism. Okay, great. I used to follow Midwestern Marx, and I liked his work. He is affiliated with the ACP, and even people who dislike the ACP generally tend to say that Eddie, is his name Midwestern Marx, he seems like a nice guy. He and I have exchanged words on Twitter, but it's usually just because he's ACP now. So it's more, whatever. Yes. Is the RCA are Trots? They're Trotskyists, so I'm not a Trotskyist, so I'm a Marxist-Leninist. So I don't agree with that ideology. I think some things in that ideology are harmful and bad. But what I will say is that they are still Marxists. And I'm a big fan of people joining orgs. I think everybody should join an org near them. And if that is the only org near you, I will tell you they are active, they go out, they are about, and their knowledge of history is usually pretty solid. So if you attend classes to learn about histories of things, they're usually pretty solid. You can get a little out of a Trotskyist org, and if that's the only thing near you, I think that's better than joining no org. It's a good place to start, is what I'm saying. But I would always say try to join a Marxist-Leninist org first. You prefer DSA over Trots? To me, they're kind of the same. I don't know. Hamburger says die? Oh, your phone's about to die. I was like, die? I mean, that's a strong take for someone saying Trotskyist orgs can be okay, but I get where you're coming from. I was like, it's fair. You notice all the ACP members on Twitter because of me? Yeah. Now they're trying to recruit me. I told you guys that, right? That's their new technique, is now they're like, you're basically... Well, at first they were like, you're not a real Marxist-Leninist. You're a fucking lib. And I was like, okay, I'm not. Sorry. I just don't like you guys. Because I don't think you guys are actually Marxists. You're doing weird readings of things because you hate blue-haired baristas so much. It's fucking up your brain. You guys are so mad at bisexuals with liberal arts degrees that it's making you stupid. You're reactionary. Like, I can't... So then they started trying to challenge me on Marxism stuff, and they were like, it's Stalin. And I'm like, I'm not afraid of Stalin. I support the USSR, obviously. I'm going to support almost everything that happened during Stalin era. Like, what? And then they're like, Kim Il-sung. And I'm like, yeah, I I'm a huge North Korea like, I support North Korea. Like, I'm trying to teach the kids about North Korea. Like, nope, that's not it. So then they eventually had to realize I was actually a Marxist-Leninist. And then now their new technique is they're like, well, you're basically one of us, so why don't you just join us? I don't get it. And I'm like, because you guys are homophobic freaks who transvestigated Hitler. And you hate liberal arts degrees so much that you try to claim that North Korea hates artists. Like, you're inventing whole new realities to justify hating in your mind, like, the idea of someone with dyed hair and a nose ring existing. Like, they also said, like, baristas weren't workers. Like, they're just kookballs. They're kookballs over there. So, yeah. So that's what's up with them. Yeah, you can find it, I think, on YouTube. They have it, of them transvestigating Hitler. Crazy. Do we like Hakeem? Yes, we love the deprogram boys. We love them. I love them. I love them all. I've been on deprogram before, so I love them. But yeah, you forgot about baristas are workers. I'm like, girl, what? What is happening over there? The Kim Il-sung thing was wild, too. And also, this was weird. So I was fighting with him about Kim Il-sung, and I'm like, North Korea values artists. First of all, it was about AI. That's what it was, because they love AI. And one of my mutuals on Twitter was like, it's not very Marxist of you to endorse AI. Like, there are actual artists, actual workers who that job should be going to, you know, whatever. In capitalism, we have to strive, blah, blah, blah. So they pushed this whole thing about how AI was good and, like, fuck artists aren't workers or whatever. And I was like, that's bullshit. Like, North Korea actually consistently has said that artists are very important parts of their revolution. And they have all their propaganda signs are beautifully hand painted. Like, they respect and revere artists in North Korea. They did the same in the USSR. All of the like Soviet realism paintings, like, that was all considered an important part of their revolution, both culturally but also as a propagandizing tool, right? Like, as a tool of communication to the masses. And they were so mad at this idea that artists could be valued that they got this guy who was from Taiwan, which he kept identifying as Taiwanese specifically and not Chinese also, which I was like, weird for the ACP to ride hard for this guy, but okay. Who was like, you fucking stupid bitch. Like really like over the top mad at me for suggesting that North Korea valued artists. Writing these long fucking posts, the posts on Twitter you can only get when you pay for them, you know? Just like fucking, and so mad at the idea that North Korea respected artists. And then I was like, okay, well, this guy's wrong. Here's Kim Il-sung literally doing, like, a speech about how artists are valued, respected members of their revolution. Like, what is happening? And then they're like, oh, so you're just going to talk over him? He's Asian. He's Taiwanese. And I was like, is the ACP doing identity politics now and wrong? Because Taiwan is not North Korea. And also, you should be calling him Chinese, probably. Like, what's up with, that's weird. What is going on? So yeah, very, very funny. Very, very funny. That was hilarious. Yeah, the ACP endorses a worker revolution, but not gay workers or artists. Yeah, they got a whole list. Or baristas. If you work service industry, you're on real thin ice with them. And then I told them I was like, you know, like 10% of people are gay, right? Like, you know, like 1 in 10 workers is gay. And they were like, where are you getting that number from? That can't be right. I'm like, this is like common knowledge that 10% of Americans identify as gay in some way. Like, and I sent them all the data, and you could tell they really were like, uh-oh. Like, they had never considered it. Like, they probably never met a gay person. So they were like, there's like 12 gay people in the United States. Why are we catering to them? And I'm like, no, we're here. We're here, we're queer. It was so funny. Yeah, the number is rising. Exactly. So they are located, I guess, all throughout the United States, but they don't have very many members. What's their beef with gay people? I don't know, but it is wild. Like, they're, like, obsessed. Like, if you look at the leadership's Twitter and you search just, like, gay, LGBT, you will see some of the most batshit insane stuff you've ever seen in your life. Like, if you search Haz Aldine's Twitter or Jackson Eagle's Twitter, I'm like, girl, at this point, methinks the lady doth protest too much. Like, what is going on here? It's cuckoo bananas. Oh, Condor. We haven't talked about Condor. That's still on the stack. Still on the stack. I see you, stack. So that's a good one to talk about. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Okay, so, sorry. We were just getting a little... We're sassy today. We're sassy. All right, how many people do we have in here? Anybody tell me? 211. Nice. Boom, boom, boom. We're doing it. We're growing. Okay, so posture check. Love your Instagram reels and your Twitch. Oh, nice. I don't actually ever post Instagram reels, so people must be posting me. My TikToks as reels, reels. So that's cool. Yay. We just started Twitch. We're new to Twitch, so hydrating. Yeah, a lot of radical feminists are super transphobic. That's true. We're crying. We're yelling. We're having emotional ranges of experiences. We're doing it. Okay, wait. Can anybody explain to me what a hype train is? Does anyone know? Because we're on a hype train. I know you can unlock special emotes. What does this mean? Is it automated from the system? Is it like the system just does it sometimes? Oh, when people send you bits. Oh, okay, got it. Got it. Okay, yay. All right, so cool. The emojis in the chat. Nice. Yay, fun. Bits and subs. Okay. Yay. You download Twitch for me? I have no clue too. So it's great. Advertise for more subs. Oh, okay. So I would be like, all right, guys, we got a hype train going. Subscribe. We're trying to get to this goal. At blah, blah subs, I'll shave my head. Like that, right? Is that what I'm supposed to do? I feel like I did it. Okay. Yeah. All right. So pretend I did that. I don't know. The triangle things with one next to them cost money. Oh, okay. Okay. I got it. I'm doing it. I'm a Twitch streamer now, guys. Add a sub goal. The ACB would be so mad if I shave my head. Oh my God, can you imagine? I'm going to do actually a live stream fundraiser for Megan Adams' campaign for California State Controller. If you guys know, I do volunteer work with the Vote Socialist campaign. So they're Marxist-Leninists running for office in California on the Lenin model of electoral engagement. And one of them's actually polling neck and neck with some Democrats. I mean, I want to find it. I'm going to show you. The one running for insurance commissioner who wants to abolish private insurance companies is like so sick. I love him. He's polling neck and neck with some Democrats. I'm going to pull it up and I'm going to show you guys while we wait for me to figure out a game plan for today. Hold on. Okay, we're on screen share. I'm not logged in. Let's see if I can find it without logging in. It's going to make me log in, isn't it? Ugh, hold on. I don't remember my fucking login. I don't remember this. Andor? Oh my gosh. Yeah. So my partner in New York is obsessed with Andor. Like, oh, Fork just woke up. Hold on. We gotta make sure Fork goes outside. She had an accident yesterday because I wasn't reactive enough. Fork, where are you? Where are you? She was taking herself out. Fork, are you outside? I don't know where she is. I think she took herself out though. Where are you, Fork? That would be so cool if she did. I think she did. Oh my God. Yes. Cool. Okay. All right. Sorry, guys. You know, Fork has needs. She has a lot of needs. And when Fork needs something, it becomes number one priority. So that's how that goes. All right. Okay. We're back. All right. Your cat taught itself to use the toilet. Lucky. So lucky. That's so cool. Okay. So Fork is very high maintenance. Like, very high maintenance. You're visiting LA in April because your org is doing a collaboration with another one in LA for a demonstration. Not sure exactly what it is, but you said it. Cool. That's going to be awesome. That's really exciting. All right. I'm going to log into Instagram just so I can show you this person who's polling neck and neck with Democrats. It's very funny and cool to me. And then I'm going to talk to you about the Megan Adams live stream I'm going to do. So I'm basically doing this fundraiser for this Marxist-Leninist who's running for California State Controller. And she wants to divest all of California from Israel and do all this other cool stuff too, like get the high-speed rail project going, whatever. And another person who's running on the same ticket as her, Lalo Vargas, who's running for insurance commissioner, wants to abolish private insurance companies and only do a public option. He, in recent polls, was like really close to some of the Democrats, which is crazy. Sorry, I'm trying to log into Instagram to show you guys those. Wait, the watermelon? They're liberal Zionists? Does feminism and communism contradict? First time chat. Not necessarily, but most people who are communists will tell you, hold on, this is a great question. I love this question, actually. So I actually want to really answer this question, but I want to show you this polling thing first really fast on Lalo's page. Let's see if I logged in correctly to my Instagram account. Yes, okay, I love this answer from Dorian Sapiens. There's a lot of different types of feminism. So Marxists believe that the main issue, the primary contradiction, right, is class. People's class is always going to matter more than any other marginalization that they experience in society. Like you, if you're a working class woman, you're probably going to have more in common with a working class man than you would have in common with Taylor Swift, right? That doesn't mean you wouldn't have some things in common with Taylor Swift. You probably both experienced, like, you know, prejudice in your lifetime, certain experiences of womanhood for sure. But at the end of the day, your life and your reality and your identity is probably going to have more in common with a working class man than it is with Taylor Swift. So that is kind of the thought process of Marxists, right? But most Marxist-Leninists will talk about these other contradictions, right, that you experience, or these marginalizations that you experience, because we recognize that the ruling class actually uses these as wedges to divide us from each other. So as you move through life as a working class person, part of your experience is having certain areas of your identity seized upon by people in power and weaponized against other people's identities. So if you were a woman, for example, that was one of the first ones. And Ingalls talks about this in On the Family. Right? That was one of the first ones. You're subjugated to men in your household, right? It doesn't matter if you're both working class. That's what the power structure is going to do to you. And one of the biggest questions that communist projects usually have to answer first and foremost is the woman question. How do you get women out of the domestic sphere and into the public sphere? And that becomes of utmost importance. And that's why one of the first things that you'll see a lot of communist places do is free childcare. Because that's big, that's major, right? You need women to be participating in a public sphere and outside of just their home, and that's part of it. Because the domestic sphere historically has been allocated to women in most cultures. So, you know, there's things like that that feel very feminist, right? Providing everybody with free childcare, liberating women from being shackled to the home, that's feminist. But it's also has to do with your class. It has to do with Marxism, right? You're a working class woman, you should be a worker. You should have the freedom to go work outside of the home. You can work in the home, you know, if you want usually, but it's usually encouraged that you work out of the home so that you have the full range of public experience. So you can participate in public conversations about your society, about your world that you exist in. Similarly with race, very obviously, people who are not white experience additional marginalization in society. Like, and when we talk as Marxists, what we care about is like your material world, like the things about your life that are super tangible. Like, do you have shelter? Do you have a house? Do you have health care? Do you have enough money to buy food? Like, food access, like these things are all very, very concrete things you need in your life. And when we look at, for example, marginalization by race, we know that Black people are less likely to have secure housing than white people are. Black women are less likely to earn a livable wage than white women are, right? Like, these kinds of things play into it as well. And we recognize that that's a tool used by the power structure to divide people. And race in particular became a very intentional tool of division in the United States after Bacon's Rebellion, when poor Black people and poor white people came together, enslaved people came together to try to overthrow their masters, the leaders. I think it was in Virginia. It was in one of the original colonies, though. And the leadership there got so freaked out after it happened that they started giving better privileges to white slaves than Black slaves, because they wanted white slaves to psychologically identify more with the slave owners who were also white than with their fellow Black slaves. That was intentional. That was on purpose. So these effects of things like racism, transphobia, homophobia, misogyny, they're super, super real in people's lives. But we also recognize that they're exacerbated as wedge issues by power structures based on class. So that's kind of the long-winded answer about, is feminism compatible with Marxism? Marxism seeks to liberate all people, including women, and recognizes that women have special accommodations, or not considerations, I guess, that will lead to their liberation, right? But the type of feminism that is sold to us today in a capitalist liberal framework is not going to liberate women from that. So I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense? I think that's a chill way to explain it. Okay, so here's the screen share. This is Lalo's page. We love Lalo, running for insurance commissioner, our Marxist-Leninist king. And where is this polling? Here we go. So people don't really think about insurance commissioner. But look, so there's one guy who's clearly in the lead at 10%, whatever. But the other two Democrats and Lalo are all polling pretty much even. They're all at like 5%, which means Lalo has a shot at winning this. So if you, oh my God, Rob, gifting all these subs. Oh my God, thank you. Yay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I pulled Madeline. That is socialism. Oh, hydrate. Sorry. Bisco, which is correct. Yeah, there were white people who were enslaved, but it's not the chattel slavery we think of. When we use the term slavery or enslaved people here in the United States, we use it differently than a lot of people in different places in the world, because our chattel slavery was very, very, very bad. And we're not the only people who had that, obviously. Other countries had some very bad chattel slavery, but we had it in such high volume. I mean, it's such a significant part of our history. So usually when we talk about slavery here, we're talking about chattel slavery that affected people from Africa, right? Black people in particular. But there were white people who were enslaved under a more like ancient European model of slavery prior to the slave trade really getting kicked off here, which marked kind of a difference in it. So you'll see some academics call both slavery. You'll see some academics make a distinction. You know, it's not the same, obviously. What we did to white people under slavery is very, very different than what we did to black people in the United States under slavery. Like, that was air quotes. It's not actually, that was actual, like, oh shit, that's like chattel slavery. So they were different in how they manifested. And part of that started specifically after Bacon's Rebellion intentionally. All of a sudden, there were rules. Like, if you're a black person and you're enslaved, your kids are born into slavery now. It's generational. If you're a white person, it's not. If you're a white person, you weren't a slave forever. You know, there was like a time limit on it. Your slavery expired if you were white. So it's like, you know, these are very, very different. If that makes sense. Yeah, on Twitter, I'm Jean Grey. Yeah, on Twitter. 12. Wow, Marxist Gamer Zero is given 12 subs in the channel. Thank you. So cool. I don't know if the water's helping any. Does my skin look healthy? Yeah, Lalo Vargas for CA. Yeah. Okay, so I just thought this was cool. I'm like, fuck yeah, give him hell, Lalo. Rad. Okay, so today I think we will do the other Gramsci text. That's going to be a good one. And then maybe we'll look at what's going on in the news, or we could talk more about Venezuela. Jean Grey is like an X-Men reference, but like, because I'm a clothing designer and I used to do a lot of denim design work, Jean like denim, and Grey spelled that way is like gray goods. It's the raw materials used to make clothes. So that was that. So, okay. Think about if there's any other questions you guys have about, oh my God, yay. Find It Lesbian gifted subs. Thank you. Thank you. So nice. Oh, I'm drinking more water. We could talk about the ICE shooting in more detail. We could talk about ICE. That could be our domestic convo, could be about ICE. Because there's a lot to say about ICE. I think we should talk about ICE. Yeah, let's talk about ICE. Okay, so we'll do ICE. We'll do the Gramsci reading. I'm pulling this stuff up. I already know what to look up. I'm searching things to get us prepped. I need like hold music while I do this, like you know. Sorry, guys. Still looking. Okay, I have something that's low res. I'm going to do a reverse image search really fast. But we're getting there. We're getting to where we want to be on this ICE conversation. Do you guys want to start with ICE or start with Gramsci? Oh, Condor. Yeah. Machado and Gonzalez. Okay, we'll do Condor. We'll do Condor. We'll do that. We'll do that. We'll do that. Okay. Operation Condor, Machado. Yes. You're right. I'm looking for this Machado thing. I haven't heard about this, so I'm trying to find it. ICE first? Okay. Okay. If anybody has a resource on it that they've seen or they want to talk about it, even if it's just something that you're like, I don't know, I saw this Twitter post, whatever, that would be helpful. I'm finding stuff that talks about both of them in the context of greater Latin America being the victims of American imperialism. But we'll see. We'll go through things together. We'll search for it. We'll find it. Okay, and now I'm going to look at the Gramsci stuff. We've got ICE. We got we're going to hunt for the Condor Machado link if nobody has anything. We're going to see if it's there. We're going to find it if it is. Okay, Gramsci fascism text. We don't want the two fascisms. We want... Sorry, the beginning is always so boring when we pull things up. While I'm like pulling it up. I appreciate you guys letting me just kind of chill with us while we search. Gramsci fascism. Okay, we were going to read neither fascism nor liberalism, Sovietism. All right. Okay, so we're here. We're on ICE. Now, I want to start off by talking about the foundation of ICE. So I have a video that I recorded a rough draft of for TikTok that I'm going to post later today about this. So you might see an abbreviated version of that, but we can talk about it in more detail here. But basically, ICE didn't exist until, 2004, 2005? Because it came about, maybe it was 2003, actually. When was ICE founded? Yeah, 2003 is when I shouted. Okay, so ICE didn't exist until 2003, and it came out of the aftermath of 9/11. So when 9/11 happened, if you were alive at the time, you remember a very confusing narrative emerged from the U.S. government of who was to blame for this. And it was almost like they realized they had this golden opportunity to vilify everybody that they ever hated, right, by saying that they were somehow responsible for 9/11. So we got fed, as Americans, this weird twisted web of kind of disinformation and confusion and doublespeak. And basically what emerged from 9/11 was this. So, yeah, if you're 23 and older, you're older than ICE. If you're 22 and under, you've never lived in a world without ICE. So those of us over the age of 23, we have lived in a world without ICE, which means we know that it is absolutely unnecessary and ridiculous. So the narrative that emerged about 9/11 was this. The people to blame were Saddam Hussein, who also had weapons of mass destruction. He was not involved in 9/11, and he did not have weapons of mass destruction. Okay, so that was one. The second was, like, the entire country of Afghanistan. They had it coming for some reason. Okay, Afghanistan did not do 9/11, but like, okay, whatever. Al-Qaeda, which George W. Bush pronounced Al-Qaeda, which I'm not here to judge how anybody pronounces anything, but it was just a cultural moment. Seeing this little man with his weird little accent get on TV and complain about Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda all the time. It became like lodged in our heads, Al-Qaeda. So there's that. And then immigrants. Now, the reason why immigrants were somehow wrapped up in this is obviously the people who did 9/11, they were not born in the United States. They came here legally and they trained and learned how to fly airplanes, and then they used that training to go do 9/11 or whatever. So part of this rhetoric was like, we need to stamp out these four evils in the world. We are going to launch this broad war on terror. And that basically could mean anything we wanted, right? What is terror? Terrorists do terror. And this is something we also heard a lot. The government would get on TV and be like, well, we got to do this to stop the terrorists. But anything that the U.S. government did not like suddenly could just get called a terrorist. And then all of a sudden we could stop you under the guise of needing to stop the terrorists. So all immigrants basically were de facto labeled terrorists. It's really the best way to think about what happened after this. I actually have a book a recommendation on this called We Are All Suspects Now. It's about this specific era of post 9/11 where basically every single person who was not white was assumed to be an immigrant. And if you were brown in any way, if you could be vaguely mistaken for being Middle Eastern, even if you weren't, if you weren't, whatever, you were treated as a suspect of the United States government. So some of the most vicious, racially, ethnically motivated hate crimes I've ever seen in my life emerged in this period. Obviously, they're not the worst that have ever occurred in American history, but in my life to this date. So brown people were literally just being attacked walking down the streets. They were getting stabbed to death by random white people who were flying into violent rages over 9/11. I mean, it was very, very, very scary time to not be a white person in the United States. Every year is a scary time to not be a white person in the United States. This was like a very direct, like not lynch mobs because they were individual people most of the time doing this, but like any white person you passed on the street might try to kill you was the vibe that a lot of people had. It was very, very scary. So, yes, they were murdering Sikhs because they didn't understand the difference between Sikh people and Muslim people. They were murdering Muslim people. But yeah, somebody who was Mexican people were getting mistaken for Middle Eastern if they had beards. I'm from Fresno. A lot of Chicano men were shaving their beards because they're like, they're going to mistake me for Middle Eastern. They're going to try to kill me. Like, it was feral. It was a feral, terrifying era. So this is the environment that ICE was born from. So the Bush administration came out with the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act basically said, look, because 9/11 happened, we're going to take away a lot of your civil liberties. And we are going to give you a lot more, basically law enforcement. We're going to create all these new systems. So TSA also came out of this era, right? We didn't have TSA before. You used to be able to go to an airport, and if your loved one was flying in, you could walk right up to where they got off the airplane and just say hi to them. That all changed. So we introduced TSA, we introduced all these systems, all these barriers you to get to just be able to go on an airplane. Now, it's worth noting that would not have stopped 9/11. Those people had, they had airplane tickets. They would have been able to go to their airplanes, to board their airplanes. They also had box cutters. They did not have big weapons. They had box cutters. I have accidentally flown on many flights with a literal switchblade, which was basically the same kind of weapon they had. I didn't realize it, and I had a switchblade in the back of one of my bags, and I flew once a month, every single month, to go see my partner in New York with that thing in my bag. Nobody ever noticed. Nobody ever caught it. So, again, this negotiation that was happening with the American public, the U.S. government being like, you have to give up a lot of your civil liberties because of terrorism, right? That was also, like, we weren't actually getting anything in return for it. We weren't actually safer because of these measures. And everybody kind of knew that. And we knew pretty early on, too, that the TSA thing didn't really make sense. It didn't really seem to be stopping anything, whatever. So the other part of this, in terms of, like, new law enforcement being created, was ICE. So ICE has a set, usually, rule of how many miles within the border they're able to operate. And that amount has actually gone up over time. They've changed the miles from the border that ICE is allowed to operate in. So for a long time, the middle of the country wouldn't really see, like if you drew like a horizontal line across the country, you really wouldn't see ICE activity. But in Southern California, you would, for example. In Texas, you would, like in these southern kind of states along the border and along the top by Canada as well. So ICE gets funded, created under George W. Bush, and we're all just kind of like, this is fucking unnecessary. This is ridiculous. And as for the other three things that were addressed, we removed Saddam Hussein from power. He did not have weapons of mass destruction, it turns out. We were in Afghanistan until 2021. 2021 is when the final troop withdrawal from Afghanistan actually happened as it related to the war on terror. We were there for like 20 years. We totally destroyed the Middle East, by the way. Millions of people lost their lives, lost their homes, were displaced. We destroyed the Middle East over this, as the war on terror. So that was kid. And as for Al-Qaeda, these kind of, extremist groups that hate the United States, we just made more of them. Because we so brutalized the Middle East that everybody there was radicalized into hating us even more. So, our response to this was obviously totally counterproductive. And by contrast, this actually ties in with Xinjiang. And I want to take a second to talk about that too, because it's relevant and interesting. China also dealt with extreme religious extremism during that same time period. The same time period where we experienced 9/11, we weren't the only country dealing with that. All right. That was an international thing. Now, the United States, 9/11, was unique. Osama bin Laden really hated the United States because of what we had done previously in the Middle East that he had been a part of, that he had been involved in. And, the United States had set up CIA training camps all throughout the Middle East, in large part because we wanted to stop the spread of communism in Afghanistan. So we were trying to train people. We actually recruited people who were Islamic extremists to come train in CIA training camps by saying the communists are the enemies of Islam. They want to take away your Islam, so you should fight them. And Osama bin Laden was considered a really big get for these training centers. The training centers, they had been trying to get somebody, they were like, we need a big name. We need like a prince. Like we need like somebody whose dad's like a king or like a sultan or something. And Osama bin Laden wasn't a prince, but his dad had either a government or a business job that was considered pretty high ranking. He was notorious enough. He wasn't a prince, but they were like, oh, we got Osama bin Laden. That's a big get. And Osama bin Laden started to get very, very disillusioned with what the United States was doing to the Middle East, right? So that was part of also, we created the conditions that led to 9/11. So that's what literally we created our own mess. And we just went in and further destroyed the Middle East and created more mess from that situation, basically. Your aunt has a picture with bin Laden? That's wild. So, ICE gets developed, and we know it's just ridiculous. ICE would not have stopped 9/11, just like TSA would not have stopped 9/11. Like, none of these things would actually have stopped 9/11. Saddam Hussein, if we had removed him earlier, it wouldn't have stopped 9/11. Taking down Saddam Hussein didn't stop another 9/11. None of these things are really related. So in Xinjiang, they were also experiencing religious extremism of a similar thing. They had their own 9/11. They had their own event that they called their 9/11. They were dealing with a lot of terrorism from Islamic extremist groups there. And that is actually when their Xinjiang policy for the Uyghur Muslims came about and was developed. So originally, they were taking the same approach the United States was taking. And all these countries, again, not just China and the United States even, a lot of countries dealing with this issue. They were taking the same approach the West was taking, which is like, we find the terrorists and we bomb them and we attack them and we take them out. But China, unlike the United States, learns from its mistakes. And I'm going to say, because they're operating within a Marxist-Leninist framework, part of that is self-critique, self-reflection, dialectics. So they realized pretty quickly, this isn't actually fixing anything. This isn't stopping it, and this is making people hate us more. So they ended up then creating a new approach. They're like, we need to start over. And they actually went to the UN guidebook for causes of crime. They were like, this is crime. Let's not get too emotional about it. What are the causes of crime? And they realized that the things that make an area more susceptible to crime are resources. It's material things. It's not having access to food or housing or good jobs or education. So they looked at Xinjiang, and you remember, they were still in a period of development. China developed so much, so rapidly. The China of the early 2000s was very different than the China today. So they were still developing a lot. And they looked at Xinjiang, and it was relatively underdeveloped. They didn't have a lot of educational opportunities. They didn't have a lot of jobs. So they're like, we need to, if we want to stop terrorism from happening in China, from these religious extremist groups, who their religious extremist groups there, by the way, usually operated under an umbrella of something called ETIM, the Islamic East Turkestan Islamic Movement. They were affiliated with ISIS as well. Al Qaeda in the United States, who did 9/11, they were also affiliated with ISIS, right? These groups were affiliated with ISIS, so it was kind of the same idea going on everywhere. They were like, we, to stop ISIS-related crime, need to basically create resources. So they came in and they built a bunch of schools, they gave people jobs, they gave people, they built infrastructure, they gave people opportunities, and they set up a new way to deal with crime. So in China, they already had a unique approach to religion, which is that, you know, your religion can be practiced privately, but you're not allowed to proselytize. So you could be convicted in China of a crime for proselytizing about your religion publicly. That's not allowed there. And what they did is they were like, okay, but if you get accused of that crime now and convicted of it, rather than going through the normal criminal justice system, you're going to go through this kind of softer criminal justice system. Kind of like in the United States, we do this with drug court sometimes. You don't have to go to real court, you go to drug court. So it was kind of like that. It was like religion court. And one of the results would be that you could just go to one of these vocational centers and you could learn a new skill, learn a new trade, learn religious accelerationism, basically, like decelerate, like, I don't know the right way to word it, like de-radicalization kind of. And then you'd end up with a job at the end of it. So people would end up going through these centers. Now, also, you could just voluntarily go to these centers if you wanted on your own. If you're just like, well, I don't have job opportunities, I need something, that was great. You could just choose to go there too. If your family was concerned about you, they could actually call a local resource and be like, I am concerned, for example, my little cousin is getting radicalized by... A lot of this recruitment was done on the internet as well, for both the people who caused 9/11 and what was going on in China, what was going on everywhere in the world with kind of this ISIS-based recruitment strategies. A lot of it was online. So if you, for example, were like, I'm worried my little cousin's getting recruited by radical extremists on the internet to do terrorism, you could call this community resource and be like, I'm concerned. And they would show up and they'd send somebody, not with guns, not like guns a-blazing, to talk to your relatives or your friends and be like, hey, people are worried about you. Like, what's going on in your life that makes this sound appealing to you? Are you mad? Are you angry? Whatever. And at the end of the conversation, they might be like, hey, I think you'd be a good fit for this program. Do you want to try it? And almost every single person said yes. Some people would be like, no. Almost every single person was like, I will try that. Yes. So what ended up happening is that China eliminated all of their religious extremism in the region. And they've been dealing with a lot too. Just like the United States dealt with 9/11, they'd been dealing with bombing campaigns of their bus lines, mass stabbings. Like, it had been pretty bad. And they totally eradicated that. Like, that does not happen in Xinjiang anymore. So meanwhile, the United States was going around doing our war on terror, creating more people to hate us in the future. China kind of de-radicalized people and eradicated this issue humanely and humanitarianly. And that is why when you look at the map of countries that support China's Xinjiang policies, it's almost all places that also have large Muslim populations that are predominantly Muslim. They themselves were dealing with some of this extremism, and they did not know the right way to end it or stop it. And they looked to China as an example of what to do. So for them, the United States deciding that China was doing something bad to the Muslim population in Xinjiang, they're like offended because they're like, we're Muslim and we struggled with the same issue with these extremists doing terrorism, and China actually presented a model to eradicate it, and that's a model we're trying to follow. So, you know, this is why I tell people, if you look at one document about the Uyghur Muslims, hold on, I'll pull it up again, the same one we looked at yesterday, the map is what you want to look at. Like, there's a reason why the people who support China are most of the countries that aren't white, and the people who condemn China for what they do there, it is white people countries. So blue is the countries who condemn China for their Xinjiang policies, their Uyghur Muslim treatment. Red is the countries who stand with them. And, you know, they weren't torture centers, they weren't concentration camps, people weren't being abused, nothing like that. They were vocational centers that people could choose to go to or be assigned to go to from court if they committed a crime. And even then, they were able to go home on the weekends, because part of the program is they're like, you need to be really, really connected with your family, basically. Your family connections, they found, would help prevent you from being radicalized. So they were like, you have to be able to go home on the families, to your family on the weekends. Your family has to be able to come here whenever they want and meet with you. You have to be writing letters to them. You need connections. You need to not be alienated and isolated and alone in society. So this is what's going on. So yeah, this is when we look at this. Countries opposing China's Xinjiang policies in blue, countries supporting them in red. They're actual policies, not the stuff that the conspiracy theory the United States made up about us doing genocide there. That's a weird Donald Trump conspiracy theory. That's not real. They're actual policies of building these vocational centers to try to de-radicalize people. Yeah, all the blue, surprise, surprise, it's the United States and our allies. And all the red, a lot of them are countries who are also dealing with the same issue. Can you hear me? Yes? Better? Yeah? Okay. So, what was the last 30 seconds? What did I say? It was from here. Oh, I know what I said. So, what I said basically is, yeah, you look at this map, the blue is all the United States and our allies, and the red is all people who support China's policies. And they're actual policies, not Donald Trump inventing that they're doing Muslim genocide, which is totally fake and fucking made up. They're actual real policies of building vocational centers and all of these things to de-radicalize people. So, tiniest boop. It's always the same map. For every political issue, if you look at a map, it's some version of this. So one of the other reasons too is that you see a lot of Muslim countries being affected. That's because the specific group that was operating in China, ETIM, doing terrorism there, they wanted to build an ethno-state that didn't just exist in China. It would have spanned 7 different countries. It was like this ethno-state that kind of shaped like this that would go across 7 countries. So 6 other countries were dealing with literally the exact same group that China was dealing with, which is super interesting. Okay, we got a troll in the chat. Yeah. Okay, so Heldon Auntie wants to add 2 things. After 9/11, Bush did have the axis of evil speech, yes, where he called Iraq, Iran, and DPRK an axis of evil, yes. That raised tensions with Iran, especially after the Iraq War, yes. And 2, a lot of the Muslim extremists were funded by the U.S., either indirectly via U.S. relations with Saudi Arabia, yep, or directly via funding the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, Israel funding Hamas to destabilize Fatah, or the U.S. training ISIS. Yep, exactly. Thank you for adding that so eloquently. Evil Auntie is correct, or Heldon Auntie, sorry, is correct. Yes, those are all true. Correct. We're stretching. And Virgo is correct that Donald Trump paid a right-wing conspiracy theorist named Adrian Zenz in Germany $600,000 to come up with that claim, basically. And American lawyers had to almost immediately be like, we are not allowed to say that that is a genocide. There is no evidence to back that up. We cannot use that word. So we had to even drop that claim pretty fast. So yeah. So that's what's going on now. So this is the political climate, right, going on that ICE is born out of. A lot of xenophobia, a lot of racism, a lot of everybody wants to hurt us, especially all the brown people. Now, today we see it leveraged against people of Latin American descent. Back then, it was really leveraged against people of Middle Eastern descent. But the lesson to take from all of this is that ICE became seen as a flexible thing. So yeah, this person, they hate us for our freedoms, yeah. So I'm just reading the chat. I'm catching up for a second. All right. Nothing interesting. We got a weirdo. So basically, this thing that emerged from ICE was that it could be flexible. The United States was always going to have geopolitical enemies. The enemies could be for any number of reasons. They have resources we want. We destroyed them and they're mad at us now and they're committing acts of terrorism against us, whatever. But ICE could be flexibly applied within our borders to attack people of that descent, to criminalize them here. And it was in one way very cathartic for white people living in the United States. ICE has been used as a tool of political catharsis. Like, you think about the whole ideology behind the Hunger Games, right? What was the ideology behind the Hunger Games in the book series? It was almost like a form of catharsis. Right? Like, we needed this. Like, this is like a sacrifice for us or whatever. That's kind of the way ICE was operating within the United States. The white people needed, basically, these people to die or to be punished for the sins of who we imagined our enemies to be. And it was a very cathartic thing for white America. And even people who condemned, for example, after 9/11, Muslim people being stabbed to death on the street by white people freaking out, they would be like, but I understand. The anger, the frustration, 9/11. You understand why they did it. So it's this very weird, sinister energy going on. So again, the book I recommend you read about this period is called We Are All Suspects Now. I have it. I can go get it really fast. Hold on, I'll do that. Wait here. You guys can decide if you want to block this guy and thing or not. It's up to you. I thought I knew where it was, and now I can't find it. Okay, so I can't get it for you. I'm so sorry, but we're all suspects now. Sorry. I thought it would be good. Okay, good. Okay, we muted some people. Nick's back? The Nick? Wow. Cool. And now Fork's mad. Okay. All right, that's fine. The Nick. Wow. Cool. Fork's barking. Fork's mad. Fork knew Nick was here. She's got feelings. Let me hold on just a second. Maybe I didn't forget about an appointment or something. Ooh. I have to track a package from FedEx that's going to my work across the street. Hold on just a sec. Let me see if I can find this. I want to make sure that I don't miss it. I'm going to have to pop away. FedEx. Little interruption here. The streams are very ADHD, aren't they? Ugh, I'm not gonna be able to find it. That's okay, I'll deal with it later. I can go pick it up later. Okay, so basic energy though going on, feral ice energy. Now, we all 100% sincerely believed that Democrats were going to do away with ice. We thought this was a temporary measure post 9/11. We thought it was fucking ridiculous. We knew it didn't do anything. We knew it was a giant waste of money. And we were like, when Democrats get elected, they're obviously going to undo ice. Nobody likes it. It's going to be a huge win for them. They did not. They did not. They did not do anything, actually, except for raise the budget. Now, Obama was the person who was elected after George W. Bush. And you guys might remember, Obama also notoriously bad on the border. The current border czar that Trump is using came from the Obama administration. Obama's nickname was Deporter-in-Chief. All right? So Obama, and the reason he was called that was because removals under Obama, I'm going to look these up, deportations by president. You will see he specifically did a type of deportation that was a removal. Right? That would be, you're in the United States, you live here, you're not at the border getting turned away or whatever, and you are found, you are extracted, and you are sent back. That is a removal. And that is what Donald Trump is doing a lot of today, right? So this is something that Obama really leaned into, and ICE was a part of that. So here it is. So even all the liberals under Obama, they still needed basically the cathartic scapegoat of someone to blame, and it was the immigrants. Now, Biden has the most in here, right? And this is from, so this is from migrationpolicy.org. They keep track of immigration-based things from year to year, and they'll show you under Clinton, there were massive amounts of deportations. Under Bush, they actually went down a little, which is shocking. ICE was invented here. This is where ICE is invented on the chart, if you can see. And ICE was largely for show. They were just terrorizing people. They weren't really doing anything. And that's also why we were like, this is not a necessary organization. Like, this is not Like, what are they doing? What for? What for? It's not actually affecting anything. It's just a waste of money. So then we get to Obama. And Obama's overall deportations did go down from Bush, certainly from Clinton. Look how high fucking Clinton's were. Right? Wild. But the thing that's on the rise is this blue line. If you chart this blue line, the blue line is up. And the reason that Obama earned the nickname Deporter in Chief is because that blue line is removals. That's removals. That's not returns. That's not you're at the border and you get sent home, you get turned away. You're removed, babe. You're taken out. So that's why he earned that nickname, this blue line going up. Now, under Biden, those numbers dipped, but Title 42 expulsions because of COVID were very, very high. So Biden deported, in general, far more people than Trump did. Obama's early terms, he deported far more people than Trump did, right? Trump's deportation numbers, his first term, were actually really low. And this was a source of embarrassment for Donald Trump. Trump was super fucking embarrassed by this because he ran on being the tough on the border guy, right? He was build the wall, but he was deporting he's got the lowest numbers on this. If you're rooting for deportations, Trump is not your guy, right? Because he's failing to do it. He was soft on the border. Exactly. And this is something, basically, that Kamala Harris profited off of during her campaign. Hold on. And that is why, for so many people with left-wing politics, they were not interested in Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris campaigned on what? Being tougher on the border than Donald Trump. And we could not say she was lying. We could not say that she would be lying because we saw that Biden had the most since Clinton, that Clinton and Obama had more than Trump. That for all of Trump's rhetoric, he was kind of a hapless idiot, right? He wasn't actually doing anything. And that these Democrats were far more insidious because they were able to, we love people of color, we hate bigotry. And the next thing you know, they're engaging in some of the most xenophobic fucking sacrifice the brown people to the gods of immigration so that the white people feel security or some shit that ever. They're doing more of it. So yeah, Harris parades around basically bragging about being way tougher on the border than Donald Trump. And this is why a lot of people with left-wing politics were like, even people who weren't like full-on Marxists were like, what the fuck? Like, no. So this is kind of what's going on there. And this is what the data we're looking at when we're like, ugh. Now, what's different about this administration for Trump is that he did not want to be humiliated on the border again. So what did he do? He hired Obama's border czar, the guy who's responsible for this blue line getting higher, the guy who masterminded the removals, especially. Now, one of the main reasons that Trump had a hard time meeting high numbers in his first candidacy or first presidency is that because of the rhetoric they use, which is very sneaky, it's very snake in the grass, fewer people tried to immigrate to the United States during a Republican presidency, which means there's fewer people you can even turn away at the border. They're more likely to come during a Democratic presidency because they think they have a chance of being okay, of getting in. And that's because of how deceitful and duplicitous the Democrats are with their rhetoric. So one of the issues Trump ran into is he was so tough on the border in his speeches that everyone's like, okay, so we're not going to come. We're not going to try, right? Because you told us that it wasn't going to work anyway, so we'll just wait. So he was not able to meet any of the numbers that he was going for. So that is why this term, he was like, the only way we're going to meet high numbers, the only way my numbers are going to be higher than Biden, are going to be higher than Obama's, is if we rely on removals. And that's what's got us in the situation we are. So he's like, I need high removals because not enough people are showing up. So to get those high removals, I'm going to hire who? Obama's guy. And that's who he hired. So the current Obama guy, or the current guy under Trump, border czar, I'm going to pull him up, is Tom Homan. Hold on. Pulling this up for you. All right. This is him. This is Tom Homan. He is the ICE director, and he actually received an award in 2015, the Presidential Rank Award for his service during the Obama administration. He was an Obama czar guy, border czar guy, and a Trump border czar guy. So this is who Trump had to go to then to raise those removals if he wanted any chance of posting high numbers to not look like a loser. So this is what's happening. So when we look at over here, ICE budgeting And we see that 2016, for example, this is the end of the Obama presidency era. He has been stacking the ICE budget every single year, the porter in chief. He's been adding more. He did not do away with George W. Bush's stupid fucking ICE, Immigration's Customs Enforcement Agency, that was bullshit that didn't need to exist. He was like, I can work with this. And he added to it. Now, we get to Trump. What does Trump do? He raises the budget even more, right? These years, it was actually flat. Very interesting. Probably because of COVID stuff. Then what happens? Biden comes into office and he's like, I see your $8.4 billion. I raise you to $10 billion. And this is what I always tell people. The best way to think about American presidents is they just yes and whatever happened with the guy before them. So Democrats love when a Republican does some crazy ass shit because that makes it easier for them, right? So when a Republican, for example, is like, oh, we're going to war here, I'm invading Venezuela, Democrats aren't like, that's actually a horrible policy. And we saw that yesterday when we looked at what Democrats were saying about Venezuela. They wanted to invade Venezuela. They were advocating for regime change in Venezuela. But optically, they were not able to go in guns a-blazing with some weird-ass cowboy American bullshit that Donald Trump was, right? They weren't able to fucking do that. That would be too bad for their fan base, for their voting base. So when Donald Trump does it, they love it. Because guess what? Next time a Democrat's in power, they don't have to invade Venezuela. We're already there. Great. That's awesome. And they get to blame it on Trump, but they get to carry on the same policies. And it's the same reason that, for example, Barack Obama did not close Guantanamo Bay, right? He doesn't have to make these big changes. He didn't start it. So optically, it's fine. And that's the issue we have going on with ICE. Democrats benefit from ICE too. They like ICE also. So it doesn't matter because it was started by Republicans. But look, Biden raised the budget too. Now today, the Trump administration has raised the budget to $28 billion. That's the current budget, all right? So that's huge. That's almost a threefold increase. Do you think Democrats are going to cut that budget when they get into office? And that's a legitimate question because it could go either way. It depends on how bad the optics are. Right now, people hate ICE. People are talking about ICE. It's also 2025. The next presidential election is years away. If we all kind of forget, they're probably just going to do a modest increase in the existing ICE budgets because that's what we always do. They don't cut it. They've never cut it. They've never cut the ICE budget. They raise it a little bit every single year. So they're probably stoked that Trump raised it to $28 billion because they would not have been able to get away with that with their voting base. But if he already did it, no, they can raise it another 5% if they want. Why not? That's normal. So this is what's going on with ICE funding being bipartisan and why it's important. Now, if we continue to maintain the same outrage, Democrats might realize that they have to promise to cut ICE, right? In order to win elections. They might realize that it's too much, that it's gone too far. We'll see. And that'll be based on their public perception and their optics. So it's going to matter the most. Oh, 2026. Sorry, 2026. Thank you for correcting me. I forgot already. We're 8 days in. So what's going to matter most is how Americans are feeling about ICE in 2028. That's what's really going to do it. How do we feel that close to the election? What do they have to run on? Because Kamala Harris was not running on cutting ICE. Kamala Harris was running on using ICE, on being tougher on the border. She was pro-ICE. So we're going to see. Very, very interesting though, right? Now, when we talk about this, I found some old stuff I'm going to pull up. Hold on. Did I pull it up? ICE budget by year. Yes, yes, yes. This is what I really want to find. I'm looking for this one picture in a higher res thing, so bear with me for a moment. I only have a low res image of this from NPR. From NPR's Instagram. Not even NPR, but we're going to look at it. I'm so sorry to do this to you, but this data is correct. And it comes from the ICE records. So here's the graph we're talking about here. So the source on this is ice.gov, and you can look up the actual firm numbers from ice.gov, and they are correct. So the number of people that have died in ICE custody so far, this is from 2025. So this is almost the end of 2025. The data goes from October 18th. So this is the number of people that died in ICE custody in 2004, right when it was created. It was created in 2003. This is the first year, 2004. So right out of the gate, we can see that what we were experiencing during the war on terror, when ICE was brand new, is similar to what we're experiencing now, right? These numbers this year, the number of people that died in ICE custody, 20 some odd, that was from 2025. Yeah, that's probably at the end of the year was probably less than what we experienced in 2004. So for older people who seem jaded by this, it's because we experienced this. We know that this is what ICE does. ICE might have been a little bit more chill in terms of just outright executions, but ICE is a tool of political opportunity. ICE is something, it's a card you keep in your back pocket. It's flexible. Whatever your enemy is, you can leverage it against them. You want to invade Venezuela? Great. We're going to round up Venezuelans in the United States and we're going to call them all criminal drug dealer gang members to manufacture consent for us to go to war with Venezuela. You have some weird Middle East plan you want to play out? Great. We can use ICE to track down Sikh men in turbans who aren't even Muslim and claim that they were going to do some form of Islamic terrorism, right? This is a tool to keep in your back pocket to use in a very flexible way whenever you have political opportunity arise. And that is why Democrats and Republicans both do not want to get rid of ICE. Even though we don't need it, it did not exist for many, many years, and it is just totally reckless. Yeah, they probably did say that about the Venezuelans in apartment buildings because I know that they were looking for Venezuelans in apartment buildings in some states. So I think that this is like a really important thing for us to remember, right? That Democrats aren't going to save us from ICE, probably, unless things get so extreme. Unless things get so extreme they feel that they have to switch up their rhetoric on it. I'm not optimistic that they will, though. Because they have also participated in this. And also, what's interesting when you talk to people is they almost forget how bad removals were under Obama, or they don't remember, or they have, that political amnesia about what was happening under George W. Bush with ICE. So for me, and people my age, to hear, oh, ICE just shot a woman in the face, I'm like, yeah, that's what they do. That's the shoot a woman in the face organization. Like, that's what they were created for. They were created basically to terrorize the domestic population with race and ethnic, hype-based kind of bang bang shoot 'em up action movie techniques. Like that has literally been their sole function, my entire time that they've existed. Right. Anyway. So this person's not American, but says, was the average American consciousness of ICE? How was it before this term? Was it in public discourse? No. So during George W. Bush, we talked about it. Now we're talking about it. Nobody talked about it under Obama. Nobody talked about it under Biden. We did. Marxists did. We were like, yeah, fuck these people. Abolish ICE. Abolish ICE. Abolish ICE. We knew people getting deported. I'm from California Central Valley. People were suffering from a lot of removals in California Central Valley, in Bakersfield, through Fresno, through Tulare, Turlock, all those areas under Obama. So people of Latin American descent living in the United States, like Chicanos, like a lot of Mexican immigrants, they were talking about it. But largely the American public, up until this white woman was shot in the face even, a couple weeks ago, whatever, they were fine with all of Obama's removals. They thought that Obama did it legally. They were like, Obama gave everyone due process. So that's what most people were saying. Now ICE is a little out of hand. Not because of the numbers of people getting removed, but because they're not getting due process. And then I'd had to tell them about this. Hold on. Okay. So this is from the American Civil Liberties Union. This was under the Obama era. Speed over fairness. Deportation under the Obama administration. This is written in 2014, okay? And this is what we're talking about. When removing individuals from this country, in 2014, under Obama, some people talking about it, the ACLU, people who were immigrants, people who knew immigrants, Marxists, we were talking about this, we were saying nobody was listening to us. And that's why, again, today, your average person out in the world is like, ICE is fine. Deportations are fine. We just need to do it the way it happened under Obama, because under Obama, it was fair. It was not fair under Obama. So that's what we're going to be reading right now. It's going to explain how it was not fair under Obama. The United States has a proud tradition of individualized due process. No matter who you are, everyone deserves their day in court. This is especially important for immigrants, many of whom might qualify for prosecutorial discretion given their considerable roots in the United States. but who will only get that consideration if a judge can review their individual case and decide whether or not they must leave. This judicial review, a brief moment of individuality and impartiality within a system that often ignores both, is critical. Yet alarming new evidence has surfaced that in 3 out of 4 removal cases, this does not happen at all. This was under Obama. So in 75% of removals, nobody was getting any sort of due process under Obama. Liberals don't know this. Liberals are like, they all got due process under Obama. They're literally just making shit up. They're just saying things. So I'm actually going to take a break in reading this to tell you a personal anecdote, right? And then we're going to get back into this. One of my friends from back in this time was arrested, and was arrested for drunk driving. I think that they were right to have been arrested for drunk driving. I think drunk driving is deeply irresponsible and they should not have done that. They were arrested for drunk driving and they were given probation and they had to appear in court. They, a couple times to check in. They had to reschedule one of their court dates because they had a job out of state that week. So they thought they rescheduled it. Turns out something happened with the paperwork and they didn't actually successfully reschedule it. They came back to the United States. They were arrested. They were arrested and they were sentenced to prison time, to serve prison time. Okay, fair. They should not have been driving drunk. They could have killed somebody. All right, yeah. So prison, though, in the United States is atrocious. Like, it's horrible. If you guys have loved ones who've been in prison, you know, the conditions in prison are fucking awful. Like, really, really bad. So he was there. And also, you know, he is Mexican, but looks very, very white. So they didn't know where to put him because the prison guards there break you up by race because they want you fighting each other instead of them. It's like a little microcosm of the United States ruling class versus the workers. Just like the United States ruling class leverages things like race, things like gender, things like sexual identity, etc., in order to keep us divided and fighting each other so we're not fighting them. That is a direct strategy prison guards use in prison. They will separate you all by race, force you into race-based gangs so you fight with each other instead of fighting them. They do this in the hopes of staving off a prison rebellion. This is one of their stated techniques. So they do this when you go in a lot. So they didn't know where to put him because he has a very Mexican name, very Mexican sounding name, but he looks white. So he also was a hipster. So he had this like hipster David Bowie style lightning bolt tattoo. And they were like, well, if we put you with the white guys, they might think the lightning bolt tattoo is like an SS thing. So we'll put you there and just change your name. And he was like, well, I can tell them to call me something different, but like, what if the guards call me by my last name? And they're like, well, just hope they don't. I don't know what to tell you. And he's like, cool. So he gets put with literal neo-Nazis in prison, first of all, whatever. His experience in prison is awful. It's fucking barbaric. And when he's supposed to be released, nothing happens. They don't release him. It takes weeks and weeks and weeks for him to actually get released. And he's like, I thought they literally forgot about me and I was never going to be able to leave prison. Nobody explained to him why this happened. He legally should have been released like months before he was actually released. Nobody explained why. So he finally gets released. And as they're releasing him, the prison guards realize that he's undocumented, that he is an illegal alien. And apparently there's this law, some loophole, where if this situation happens, the prison guards can get immediately deputized de facto to be your immigration court hearer. Just some random prison guard. So they literally picked a random prison guard to deputize and hear an impromptu immigration court case in the prison of my friend. And fortunately, they picked a guy who kind of liked my friend, was like kind of okay with him. And he was like, I think you get to stay, you know? So I decided you get to stay. So my friend got to stay. But if they had picked a different guy, he would have just literally been, okay, now you're out of prison. Now you're deported immediately. You would have been transferred to like deportation immediately from there. And I don't know if you guys know anybody who's been a prison guard. Also, a prison guard is not a government job. Like, that's usually a private contracted service. You're privately hired. That's just a random person. So it's a random private civilian most of the time who gets deputized on the spot to decide if you stay in the United States or not. That happened under the Obama administration. That's what happened to my friend in the Obama administration. So we're going to jump back to this now. Alarming new evidence happening in 2014 showed that under Obama, 3 out of 4 removal cases did not have any due process. So they said yesterday the Migration Policy Institute released the report, The Deportation Dilemma, Reconciling Tough and Humane Enforcement on the Obama administration's immigration enforcement record. One of MPI's principal findings is that the deportation system had dramatically changed over the past 19 years, moving from a judicial system prior to 1996, where the vast majority of people facing deportation had immigration court hearings, to a system today of non-judicial removals, where 75% of people removed do not see a judge before being expelled from the U.S. The numbers are staggering. In 1995, 1,400 immigrants were subject to non-judicial removals, representing 3% of total population, total deportations. By 2012, that number had risen to 313,000 non-judicial removals, an all-time high. That was also under Obama. Under today's removal system, only 1/4 of all people facing expulsion get to present their cases before an immigrant judge. These judges, employed by the Justice Department, are experts in immigration law. They conduct formal court hearings where they hear live witnesses, review documentary evidence, and evaluate applications for immigration relief. By contrast, non-judicial removals are fast-tracked proceedings wholly controlled by the Department of Homeland Security. For those of you who remember Aspen, guess where Aspen works. Sometimes involving only a single border agent who acts as both judge and jury. Those facing non-judicial removal have no lawyer and no chance to appeal. The Obama administration has prioritized speed over fairness in the removal system, sacrificing individualized due process in the pursuit of record removal numbers. A deportation system that herd 75% of people through fast-track, streamlined removal is a system devoid of fairness and individualized due process. Non-judicial removals violate our constitutional tradition and cannot be reconciled with an administration that has repeatedly stated its commitment to immigration reform. Fairness and individualized due process must be restored to the system. Expedited removal should be limited to cases where individuals are apprehended at ports of entry or lane borders. So that's what we were talking about, the difference between a removal or like a return. Those are very different. All individuals must be screened to determine whether they are eligible for immigration relief or prosecutorial discretion, especially if they have U.S.-based families or have lived in the U.S. for a substantial period of time. Individuals without a lawyer should be advised of their rights by a judge before agreeing to stipulated removal, and there should be an appeal process. Anything less is un-American. Okay, this is what the ACLU was saying about Obama. All right, so yeah, this idea that it was better under Obama, it was still bad. It was still bad. Now, I will say, the number of people who died in ICE custody was lower under Biden and Obama. But actually, Biden's was comparable to Trump's first term. Or Obama's, rather. Obama's was comparable to Trump's first term. These are pretty comparable numbers we see here. Right? Yet another example of how, liberalism will not save you, basically. The thing that really is worth hammering home, though, is the way that ICE works domestically in conjunction with our foreign policy. It's like a domestic arm extension of our foreign policy. So Trump's cracking down on Latin American immigrants. Those immigrants, many of them had to come to the United States because the United States destabilized their home countries. And we're using that as part of our propaganda tool to manufacture consent for us invading Latin American countries again. It's like this weird cyclical process. So whatever you see ICE doing domestically is a reflection of America's foreign policy agenda at the moment. It was like that under George W. Bush, right? Who they're targeting, what group of immigrants they're targeting. And it's like that today under Donald Trump as well. Isn't treatment in the new state-run detention centers worse under Trump? I mean, we had kids in cages under Obama as well. I think that all of our prison systems, incarceration systems are very, very bad. I think that's subjective and hard to say. I think it's all bad, right? So to me, it's all unacceptable. You will also find some Marxists who tell you, like, border control is an important part of Marxist-Leninism. And it is true that many Marxist-Leninist places do have tighter border control. They do. China has pretty tight border control. You can come live in China, but only if you already have a job, right? The USSR had famously pretty tight border control. North Korea, you need an exit visa and a re-entry visa. So, that is true. And it's usually because these places have a couple of reasons. One, they're trying to protect themselves from being destabilized by places like the USA trying to sneak in spies or espionage or overthrow them, right? But also number two, because it's a centrally planned economy, they need to know how many people they are planning for. And that's a big part of it too. They need to keep track of things. They need to make sure they have resources for everybody. Like they're planning the economy for a certain number of people. It has to stay relatively consistent for their resources. So in the United States, we don't have that excuse. Right? Our deportation system, we're supposed to be the land of the free markets. We should be the land of the free borders too. Additionally, just ethically, principally, like, we created these borders arbitrarily. Like, if you know anybody in the United States in an area that was even semi-recently Mexico, you will know many of them will tell stories about their family members waking up and realizing that they were no longer in Mexico one day because the border just changed and now they were in the United States. So we have these very porous border relationships built in to our economy here and our political and cultural existence here in the United States. We also have agreements at our southern border with Mexico for labor programs that are very beneficial to the USA as well. So Here we already have this whole system that revolves around porous borders, but it's only set up one way, where we benefit and nobody else is allowed to benefit. So I think that's also just worth throwing in there too. So that's what we were looking for in regards to ICE. So today, or yesterday rather, when we talk about ICE shooting a woman in the face because they're untrained fucking imbeciles running around with guns thinking they're the stars of their own action movies. Yeah, like yes, that's the exact kind of stuff we saw happening under George W. Bush. I think this is the first time ICE has killed a U.S. citizen, but to me that doesn't make it better. Like, and I think that a lot of Democrats feel pressure to respond now because she was a white blonde mother, right? A white blonde citizen who was a mother. The one-child policy in China is exactly part of that planning. So basically, China realized that they needed to build a lot of infrastructure very, very fast, and they were not able to keep up with what people needed. So they implemented the one-child policy as a form of population control to make sure that they could build the infrastructure and get food and shelter and what everybody needed in a consistent enough manner to be able to take care of everybody. And now they no longer have the one-child policy. It's very, very interesting. I'm not sure it's something I would advocate for, but given their situation they were in, they were kind of in a crisis situation, so that's how we have to understand it. Right? I especially wouldn't advocate for that here in the United States because I know how it would work. Right? It would end up with eugenics against disabled people, basically. Right. So, I think that the one-child policy, I think we can all agree was bad, like not ideal, right? That's not true. Nobody ideally is like restricting how many children a population can have. That's not great. Very, very obviously. But I think that China was really in a desperate situation. I think that they were like, our alternative is mass famine that kills millions of people. So we have to learn how to take care of the people we have right now before we can start bringing in a lot of new people. And I understand that logistically for them. Again, I can't say that that's a decision I would make, but also I'm not in charge of a country. So that's what they felt they needed to not have like mass starvation and deaths in their country. Right? So, and which would have been inhumane as well. I think they were just they were stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? It's like, there's no good way out of this. So you just got to pick the one that hopefully kills as few people as possible. And I think that's what they did. Your friends and adoptees from it? Yeah, I know some people also who've had some interesting experiences as a result of the one-child left behind policy. So, yeah. All right, so that's what's up with ICE, right? Now, ICE obviously does tie in with Venezuela. Like I said, they're demonizing whoever they demonize domestically. It's a reflection of our foreign policy. So we're demonizing Venezuelan Americans. We're saying they're all criminal gang members here. We were locking up Venezuelans just for having tattoos. Do you remember that? Anybody from Venezuela with tattoos we were saying was part of the made-up gang that Nicolas Maduro is part of? That. Oh, your family left China during that time period? They wouldn't talk about it? Yeah, I mean, I think it was a hard period. I think it was a very hard period for them. Very, very challenging. So that ties into, like I said, our foreign policy, though. What happens domestically with ICE is a reflection of our foreign policy. And the reason why Democrats and Republicans are the same on ICE, it's the same reason they're the same on foreign policy, right? Imperialism is a necessary thing to uphold capitalism. You cannot have capitalism without imperialism. They need the military apparatus to be doing these horrible, violent things all around the globe. And ICE is a convenient tool to scapegoat those types of people from other countries that we might be bombing with our military. We might be scapegoating them here for domestic problems as well, to kind of create this circular effect, like one feeding into the other, right, with our domestic policy on immigration. So this is a timeline of CIA operations in Latin America that we could look at. This is also a long history of U.S. military interventions in Latin America as well. We also have this one about Trump intervention in Venezuela as a return to form for the U.S. And we have bombing for peace from the Daily Star. This is kind of a track record of it as well. And then we have our Gramsci. Should we take a Gramsci break? Should we do that? Oh, for the next liberal that asked me, can you state clearly what you would say to how Democrats benefit from ICE politically? Yeah, so the first thing you should say is the first thing you need to know is that Democrats had the opportunity to abolish ICE. Obama could have abolished ICE. It had only existed under one president before, George W. Bush. He did not. He instead chose to increase the ICE budget. So that's a thing to hammer home. Democrats have never seriously proposed abolishing ICE, and they have consistently raised the ICE budget every single time they've been in office. So remember that. And Obama had more removals than Donald Trump did. And today, Donald Trump's border czar actually came from the Obama administration. Obama gave this border czar today that we see a presidential award. So that'll get you to the why. So make sure they know that. So make sure, they are clearly benefiting from it. They are communicating in all material ways they are benefiting from it. They like ICE. They want to keep ICE. So then the question is why? And to understand why, you really just have to look at America's foreign policy. The foreign policy measures between the Democrats and the Republicans are basically the same. They're doing the same things. They're just doing it with a slightly different affect. They present it different. They put on a different type of show when they do it. But they're doing the same thing materially. And ICE's role domestically is to act as a representation of the foreign policy agenda. So, whoever our political enemy is abroad, we will also make a political enemy at home. And part of that creates this propaganda cycle. So if we are able to tell people domestically Venezuelans are all rapists and murderers and thugs and they're all part of this gang, and that's why we have to deport them, then we look at Venezuela and we go, look, they have a huge problem because they're full of drug dealing gangs. So obviously their president is a drug dealer and a gang member, and we need to abduct him. This is the kind of relationship. So ICE serves as the domestic presentation of foreign policy abroad. So Democrats clearly find that useful for them as well. Otherwise, they would have abolished ICE, or they would have at least cut the ICE budgets at the very least, and they haven't. They have not. So, I think that's one of the main things you can say. The other thing you can say is that ICE allows the U.S. government to provide a scapegoat for our problems, right? The criminalization of immigration, of immigrants, allows us to say, well, maybe all the problems we have here aren't our fault. Maybe it's their fault, right? So, you're late today, work was crazy. Hi, you made it though. Okay, so let's do Gramsci. Let's take a little Gramsci break. So this is the piece I wanted to read the other day. Neither fascism nor liberalism, but Sovietism. So the background info I want to give on this going into it is that I think that all of modern history has been, I've said this a lot, you've probably heard me say this a lot, has been about the struggle between fascists and communists, socialists, Soviets, right? While the capitalists profit from fascism and look on and go, oh no, but they actually are fine with it, right? They're fine with fascists. So capitalists look at fascism emerging and they go, how do we make money off of this? How do we profit off of it? And they will find a way to profit off it. They always do. It's easy. Communists, socialists will look at the rise of fascism and go, this is really bad. We need to stop it. And remember, communists, socialists, they do not profit at all from fascism. So then what this represents is liberalism, and a lot of that's like a synonym for capitalism, right? We don't use it that way here in the United States, but liberalism, capitalism is a liberalist ideology. It's a free market ideology. Liberalism is an ideology based on freedom, and it's your freedom of the free market, right? The free market, but also your individual freedoms and how they interact. And I always tell people to think of liberalism as a slide. On one end, you have your individual freedoms to not be exploited and harmed. And on the other hand, you have the market's freedom to exploit and harm you for profit. And where you fall on this scale of liberalism is like a slider for how much you want. You can't have it both ways. You can't have a perfectly free market and also a perfectly free individual, because the market relies on exploiting you for profit, right? Where does your freedom to, go out into the world and own a home if you want to, and relax if you want to, and retire at 30 if you want to, all of these things you want, where does that end? And your boss's freedom to pay you $7.25 an hour to work in his widget factory 60 hours a week with no paid overtime and horrible conditions begin. And that's a constant negotiation, right? So that's what liberalism is trying to do. Now, the concession that liberalism makes is this. They know you're not going to go along with just being heavily exploited by the free market. So they have to give you a little bit of personal freedom to make it worthwhile to you. freedom of press, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, things like this. And liberalism as an ideology then is the ideology of free market capitalism, but it also can be the ideology of some of those personal freedoms as well. Now, both conservatives and liberals in the United States have a liberal ideology. So we use those words colloquially here, right? Conservative, liberal, to mean different things than liberalism as an ideology. So when Gramsci's talking about liberalism, he's talking about capitalism, basically, free markets, things like that. So I think that's important knowledge for us to know. All right. In the political crisis of the liquidation of fascism, the opposition bloc increasingly appears to be a factor of a secondary order. Its heterogeneous social composition, or do you guys say heterogeneous? I think that's so creepy. It sounds too much like erogenous. So I say heterogeneous. Is that what you guys say? I've heard people say both, and I never know. Barista factory. Yes. The barista factory. I'm going to say heterogeneous. Its heterogeneous social composition, its hesitations, and its aversion for a struggle of the popular masses against the fascist regime reduce its actions to a journalistic campaign and parliamentary intrigues, which impotently run up against the armed militia of the fascist party. Okay, we're one paragraph in. We're doing fucking bangers here. This guy just dropped bars. All right, so heterogeneous. Yes, okay, that's how I've been saying it. I'm a homogeneous. I believe you, I'm at scene. So this is fucking awesome. Everything he's just opened with, right? So if you think of a liberalism, capitalism, whatever, it is never going to be able to fight an armed militia of a fascist party. And we know that. When you look at if we think of here, okay, the Republican Party is moving towards fascism. And we know fascism is its own political and economic ideology, right? It involves an economic ideology of corporatism. The idea is very much what's good for the corporation is good for the state. Therefore, the state acts in service to the corporation. If you, therefore, own a car company and the government is like, hey, we need this many cars from you, you privately owned car company, you could be like, my workers aren't working hard enough, send the military, and the military will literally come point guns to the back of your workers' heads and be like, make more cars. And then you sell the cars obviously to the government and you make money, private money, as a private business owner. So a lot of people call fascism capitalism in crisis, but it is its own economic and political ideology. So a lot of people also, oh gosh, hi. Oh my god, there's so many. How many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, there's 12. I'm going to count them off. I did 15. How many do we get? 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, I need 7 more. Did I do 15 or 13? I think I did 15. I'll do 5 more. Okay, I'm out of water. No more. Yeah, I don't drink water, so everyone waterboards me periodically to make sure I drink water. Okay. Oh, the waterboarding, probably. So, if we talk about the Republican Party is obviously moving towards fascism, Donald Trump has talked about some elements of corporatism getting integrated into the economy in the United States, more corporate merging with private business, which is very, very different than when communism, for example, has a government buyout of private business. In corporatism, in the fascist economic ideology, these companies retain private ownership. It's more like formalizing the relationship between the capitalist oligarchy, right, and the government circle. So, yeah, the way I usually explain it is this: like, capitalism is private business owned for private profit. Communism is public business owned for public profit, and fascism is private business owned for public profit. I don't know if that's confusing or not, but that's like just a shorthand way to understand it. So what he's saying is that, like, look, the political arm of fascism is to defend the state at all costs, right? To have a heavy militia, heavy emphasis on militia, very, very low emphasis on individual rights. And liberalism is going to be feckless in coming up against that, right? It has too many hesitations because it's profiting off of fascism as well. It's a version for struggle of the popular masses. It's like, well, so some poors are getting exploited. How bad is it really? How bad is fascism really? So, all right, they put guns to their workers' heads. Who really cares? Like, what? So that's what he's talking about here. They're a version for struggle of popular masses. So he's saying is that it reduces their actions to a journalistic campaign and parliamentary intrigues. And when we think about this in the United States today, we think about the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. If we imagine the Republican Party to be moving towards fascism and the Democratic Party to be more of a stronghold of classic, capitalism as we think of it, classic liberalism, this is really what we see here. The classic liberal arm, the Democrats, are supposed to go up against these new proto-fascists, right? The Republicans. And what do they have? The Republicans have an armed militia. They've got ICE. They've got the military, right? They're doubling down on this stuff. The capitalists, the liberals, the Democrats are like a journalistic campaign. They're saying harsh words. They're like, that's not fair. That's not nice. We don't like it. Parliamentary intrigues. They're showing up and they're like, I vote no. How about that? The fascists, meanwhile, are building a fucking army. They got guns. They're shooting women in the face. You see what I mean? So this is already, Gramsci's dropping bars about this, right? They have brat memes too. You're so right. That's what the Democrats bring to the table. They're feckless. They are not equipped. Capitalism is not equipped to stand up to fascism. And part of the reason is that these hesitations that Gramsci's talking about, part of the hesitation is their ability to profit from it, which we see over and over again. So Gramsci continues. In the opposition movement to fascism, the most important part has passed to the Liberal Party because the bloc has no other program to oppose fascism than the old liberal program of parliamentary bourgeois democracy. So this is the average, everyday Americans. We're like, what the fuck are we supposed to do? Democrats, do something. You have power. Ostensibly, you're supposed to do something here. And this is what most of the masses are saying, right? They're looking at the Democrats. They're like, do something. And this is what Gramsci's talking about here. The return to the Constitution, to legality, to democracy. They can't legally do that. ICE can't legally shoot a woman in the face. What are they doing? You can't legally invade Venezuela. You didn't get congressional approval first. This is what Democrats are doing. This is exactly this. In the discussion concerning the succession to fascism, according to the Congress of the Liberal Party, the Italian people is placed by the opposition before a choice, either fascism or liberalism, right? You get Donald Trump or you get Kamala Harris. You get the Democrats. That's what you get. Either a Mussolini government of bloody dictatorship or a Slandri, Giolati, Amendola, Tirati, Don Sturzo, or Vella government tending towards the reestablishment of the good old liberal Italian democracy, under whose mask the bourgeoisie will continue to exercise its exploitative rule. So this is what really we saw in the last election. Hitler or Hitler Jr., right? And Hitler Jr. is the liberal capitalist agenda. The worker, the peasant, who for years has hated the fascism that oppresses him, believes it's necessary, in order to bring it down, to ally himself with the liberal bourgeoisie. You have to vote Democrat. You have to vote Kamala. It's the only thing that's going to defeat Trump, right? You have to. To support those who in the past, when they were in power, supported an armed fascism against the workers and peasants, right? Even though Hillary Clinton gave us Donald Trump with her Pied Piper strategy, right? She selected Donald Trump to be her competition, even though, Biden raised the ICE budget. Obama raised the ICE budget and armed these people and gave them more means. This is what he's saying here. And who just a few months ago formed a sole bloc with fascism and shared in the responsibility for its crimes. Do you guys remember Kamala Harris? Party above country? Party above country? This is exactly what this says. And this is how the question of the liquidation of fascism is posed. Like, this is what it's supposed to fight fascism? These fucking capitalists teaming up with them to be like, party over country, increasing ICE budgets, supporting them, being like, it's fine, just get congressional approval. No, the liquidation of fascism must be the liquidation of the bourgeoisie that caused it. And this is the tie between capitalism and fascism, right? When the Communist Party, in the days after the assassination of Matteotti, issued the slogan, "Down with the government of assassins, dissolution of the fascist militia," it didn't think that the government of assassins should be replaced by a government of those who, in all of their policies, had opened the way to and armed the assassins, right? When the leftists are like, down with fascism, we don't mean bring in the people who created fascism and allowed it to happen. We don't mean bring in the Democratic Party who let this happen under their feckless watch. It never thought that Giolitti, Needy, and Amendola, who were in power when the fascist militia was formed, would be capable of disarming the militia, which they had favored and armed against the working class. In putting forth its slogan, our party didn't intend to replace failing fascism with the old liberalism, whose opprobrious failure and definitive liquidation of the March on Rome had signaled. The Communist Party, from the beginning of the crisis of fascism, affirmed that the working class and the peasants must be the grave diggers and the successors of those in power. The action of the massive industrial proletarians and peasants is necessary for the defeat of fascism, for the class struggle with all of its consequences. Without a doubt, the proletariat should and must use, in its struggle against fascism, the contradictions and struggles that have developed within the bourgeoisie and the petty bourgeoisie. But without direct action, fascism can never be brought down. Posing the problem in this way would mean, at the same time, clearly posing the question of the succession to fascism. With the defeat of fascism by the actions of the worker and peasant masses, liberalism will have no part in the succession. This right belongs to the government of workers and peasants, which alone will be capable of and will have the sincere determination to disarm the fascist militia, arming the working class and peasants. So the Democrats are never going to do it. The Nancy Pelosi's, whose stock portfolios profit immensely from the actions of people like Donald Trump, they have no motivation to really pursue dismantling fascism. And they won't do it until it's too late. And that's what we saw with the Italian fascists. That's what we saw also with World War II, with Germany. You guys remember, obviously, the USSR under Stalin wrote to Britain and France and was like, we have to team up to stop the fascists in Germany. And Britain and France was like, let them cook a bit. And then there's also supposedly like a phone call, a conversation that happened with the United States. We don't have that in documented writing, though. We have it in documented writing for Britain and France. The same thing happened. The United States was like, well, let them cook a little. Maybe it's fine. Maybe it's cool. We kind of like it, right? It's not going to happen. The only people who are going to be able to stop fascism are those who do not profit from it. The bourgeoisie, the petty bourgeoisie, they are profiting from fascism, just like they are profiting from capitalism. So they're not going to stop it. So the only people incentivized to stop it are communists. So this is why we say communists are the only force historically that has ever defeated fascism. Communists defeated it in Italy. Communists defeated it in Germany. And communists are going to be the ones to defeat it again. So when fascism is on the rise, so is anti-communism, because they want to make sure the only force that can stop them is removed from power. It's not an option. They want to render them non-existent as much as possible. So that's what I think is talking about here. At the current time, there's a question of something other than the return of the Constitution to democracy and liberalism. These latter are mellifluous words that the bourgeoisie uses to mislead the workers of the city and the countryside in order to prevent the crisis from taking on its true character. That is the vengeance of the workers and peasants against the fascism that has suppressed them, and against the liberalism that has misled them. Boom. And which just a few months ago collaborated or sought to collaborate with Mussolini. Didn't we see so many Democrats collaborating with the Republicans, trying to collaborate with them, wanting to collaborate with them? Absolutely wild. Is it freezing? Sorry. Oh. The Italian crisis can be resolved through the actions of the laboring masses. There is no possibility for the liquidation of fascism on the plane of parliamentary intrigues, only a compromise that leaves the bourgeoisie at the lead, along with armed fascism at its service. Liberalism, even if inoculated with the glands of the reformist monkey, is powerless. It belongs in the past. And all of the Don Strussos of Italy, united with the Turratis and the Vellas, will not succeed in returning it to the youth necessary for the liquidation of fascism. A government of the classes of workers and peasants, which will not preoccupy itself either with the Constitution or with the sacred principles of liberalism, but which is determined to definitively defeat fascism, to disarm it, and to defend the interests of the workers of the cities and fields against all exploiters, this alone is the sole youthful force capable of liquidating a past of oppression, of exploitation, and crime, and of giving a future of true liberty to all who labor. Today, the Communist Party is the only one that repeats this truth to the proletariat. Its influence increases. Its organization is developing. But the majority of the workers and peasants, dragged along by the Confederation of Labor and the Maximalist Party, in their turn advancing in the wake of the constitutional opposition, has not yet reacquired its class consciousness, hasn't understood that the working and peasant class is the principal factor in the crisis, because it has the irresistible numbers and great force of youth. And I think that's really relevant in the United States today, right? The only thing that's going to save us from fascism is communism, is a socialist future. But the average worker does not have that class consciousness right now. And they are looking to the old ties of liberalism, the old way of doing things, thinking we can just go back to that. You can't go back to that, though. There's no going back to that. And even if we did go back to that, it wouldn't solve the problems, right? It would continue a different form of harm. If it doesn't want to delude itself, it must act on the plane of the class struggle as an independent force, which will soon be determinate, and not on the plane of class collaboration in order to do nothing but change the mask of the Italian bourgeoisie. The essential task of our party consists is having to penetrate among the workers and peasants this fundamental idea. Only the class struggle of the mass of workers and peasants will defeat fascism. Only a government of workers and peasants can disarm the fascist militia. When these essential truths will have penetrated the spirit of the working and peasant masses by means of our tireless propaganda, the workers of the factories and the fields of whatever party will understand the need to construct worker and peasant committees for the defense of their class interests and for the struggle against fascism. They will understand that these are necessary instruments of the revolutionary struggle and of their will to replace the government of assassins, the fascists, with a government of workers and peasants, the people. At the moment of the closing of the Liberal Congress, which seeks yet again to win over the working people from one end to the other of Italy, the workers and peasants answer their sonorous and empty chatter with neither fascism nor liberalism, Sovietism. Okay, so I think that this piece is maybe the most relevant today. And the question for us becomes, how do you translate this piece to the average person, to liberals? How do you explain this concept to them? That liberalism can't save you from fascism, right? And I think there are some really tangible things we've seen. What are the liberals doing? What will the liberals do now that ICE has shot a woman in the face? What will they do? They'll do some strong words. They'll say, get the fuck out of Minnesota. Will they abolish ICE? Will they, Tim Walz is calling in the National Guard to defend Minnesota from ICE? What's going to happen there? What's that going to look like? Will they actually do anything? And that, history, that remains to be seen, obviously, but history tells us that they probably will not. They probably will not. That's what we have to come to understand. They will not. Socialism is the future, right? It's one big club. And they're part of it, and we're not. So I think our challenge becomes in communicating this to people. So I know the things that I'm currently working on with my messaging is, number one, you don't have to identify as a communist, but anti-communism affects you and you should be scared. You should be scared of the rise of anti-communism because it's on purpose and it's intentional. Communists are the only people who've ever historically defeated fascism. In Italy, in Germany, right? So when people are going around trying to make you hate communists, you might want to ask yourself why. Why are they all of a sudden trying to make you hate communists, right? Oh, my thumbs up thing's still on. There's usually a reason. It's a calculated reason. It's because fascism is on the rise and fascists know that communism is the only thing that can defeat them. So that's important. Even if you don't want to call yourself communist, you don't want to be a communist, we are the canaries in the coal mine. And when they start coming for our rights, there's a reason why the first line of the poem is first they came for the communists. Okay, so this person, first time chat, socialism will never happen in America. We are in the imperial core and to propagandize with anti-blackness and overall anti-communist ideas. And I'm going to tell you this. I know why you feel that way. I understand feeling that way. The U.S. government doesn't believe that. The U.S. government doesn't agree with that. The U.S. government thinks socialism can happen here and is terrified of it and thinks it's very, very realistic, right? So, yeah. What did Mondani do? Somebody said Mondani basically said it's super unfortunate, but that's why we released a video saying you should let ICE do their job and not obstruct. That's the liberal solution to fascism, right? So the period we're in right now with socialism is education period. We want to educate people. We want to teach people not to be afraid of socialism as a concept. We want to teach people what it really is. When people come out with like fascism and communism are the same thing, you got to debunk that. You got to be like, those are totally different ideologies. You know that, right? There's three modern contemporary ideologies. Learn to get comfortable talking about them. Capitalism, communism, fascism. These are all different. And historically, the only one that's defeated fascism has been communism. So we got to get really comfortable, talking about these things, basically. Very, very interesting. Okay, I have to get off of here soon. We've got 10 more minutes, basically. Should we see if there's anything in the news really fast before we jump? Should we do any questions? Oh, here. We got somebody with a thought. 2 excerpts that supplement Gramsci. Let's take a look. 2 excerpts, yes. The paragraph starting with "True, the proletariat even after the September catastrophe." Let's look. Okay, well, let's see. And again, Trotskyists, weird. Trotsky had some bangers. It's okay. So, true, the proletariat, even after the September catastrophe, was capable of waging defensive battles. But the social democracy was concerned with only one thing: to withdraw the workers from combat at the cost of one concession after another. The social democracy hoped that the docile conduct of the workers would restore the public opinion of the bourgeoisie against the fascists. You're right, these are really good, supplementary. Moreover, the reformists even banked strongly upon the help of King Victor Emmanuel. To the last hour, they restrained the workers with might and main from giving battle to Mussolini's bands. It availed them nothing. The crown, along with the upper crust of the bourgeoisie, swung over to the side of fascism. Convinced at the last moment that fascism was not to be checked by obedience, the Social Democrats issued a call to the workers for a general strike. But their proclamation suffered a fiasco. The reformists had dampened the powder so long in their fear lest it should explode that when they finally, with a trembling hand, did apply a burning fuse to it, the powder did not catch. I think this is really interesting, too. What they're basically saying is that people did so little so late, right? That you had already stamped out any revolutionary spirit from the people, from the masses. And I think that's something we struggle with too. And that when push comes to shove, the capitalist class will always end up siding with fascism over communism over leftists. And this is we have our own variation of this idea we say in terminology, right? That liberals will side with fascists over leftists every day. And that's what's getting described here. For Mexico, I really recommend you guys follow Ome if you don't already. Sugar Skull Angelic. She's a Mexican communist and talks a lot about imperialism and communism in Mexico. On TikTok and on Twitter. So, do you guys want to keep going on this? It's pretty long. Maybe we'll check out the other one really fast. The other expert, okay. Ome, Sugar Skull Angelic is the username. So this is a Stalin piece concerning the international situation. This one's pretty long too, but let's just start it off. So let's see. He has 3 factors he's talking about. The opening of an era of bourgeois democratic pacifism, that we should definitely read. The intervention of America in European affairs, okay, and the strengthening of left-wing elements in European labor movements. Section 1, I think. The period of bourgeois democratic pacifism. We might be able to get through this whole thing and then be done. Firstly. Oh, do you think firstly? Okay, yeah, here. Great, thanks. Firstly, it is not true that fascism is only the fighting organization of the bourgeoisie. Fascism is not only a military technical category. Fascism is the bourgeoisie's fighting organization that relies on the active support of social democracy. This is good. You're great. Yeah, you're doing great. Social democracy is objectively the moderate wing of fascism. This is where this quote comes from that we always say. There is no ground for assuming that the fighting organization of the bourgeoisie can achieve decisive successes in battles or in governing the country without the active support of social democracy. There is just as little ground for thinking that social democracy can achieve decisive successes in battles or in governing the country without the active support of the fighting organization of the bourgeoisie. These organizations do not negate but supplement each other. So this is really, think about your Mamdanis. Think about Mamdani going on TV and calling Maduro a dictator, right? Meeting with Donald Trump. They are not antipodes, they are twins. Fascism is an informal political bloc of these 2 chief organizations, a bloc which arose in the circumstances of the post-war crisis of imperialism, and which is intended for combating the proletarian revolution. The bourgeoisie cannot retain power without such a bloc. It would therefore be a mistake to think that pacifism signifies the liquidation of fascism. In the present situation, pacifism is the strengthening of fascism with its moderate social democratic wing pushed to the forefront. Secondly, it is not true that the decisive battles have already been fought, that the proletarian was defeated in these battles, and that bourgeois rule has been consolidated as a consequence. There have been no decisive battles as of yet, if only for the reason that there have not been any mass, genuinely Bolshevik parties capable of leading the proletariat to dictatorship. Without such parties, decisive battles for dictatorship are impossible under the conditions of imperialism. The decisive battles in the West still lie ahead. There have been only the first serious attacks, which were repulsed by the bourgeoisie, the first serious trial of strength, which showed that the proletariat is not yet strong enough to overthrow the bourgeoisie, but that the bourgeoisie is already unable to discount the proletariat. And precisely because the bourgeoisie is already unable to force the working class to its knees, it was compelled to renounce frontal attacks, to make a detour, to agree to a compromise, to resort to democratic pacifism. Lastly, it is also not true that pacifism is a sign of the strength and not the weakness of the bourgeoisie. The pacifism should result in consolidating the power of the bourgeoisie and in postponing the revolution for an indefinite period. Present-day pacifism signifies the advent to power, direct or indirect, of the parties of the Second International. But what does the advent of power to the parties of the Second International mean? It means their inevitable self-exposure as lackeys of imperialism, as traitors to the proletariat. For the governmental activity of these parties can only have one result: their political bankruptcy. The growth of contradictions within these parties, their disintegration, their decay. But the disintegration of these parties will inevitably lead to the disintegration of the rule of the bourgeoisie, for the parties of the Second International are props of imperialism. Would the bourgeoisie have undertaken this risky experiment with pacifism if it had not been compelled to do so? Would it have done so of its own free will? Of course not. This is the second time that the bourgeoisie is undertaking the experiment with pacifism, since the end of the imperialist war. The first experiment was made immediately after the war, when it seemed the revolution was knocking at the door. The second experiment is being undertaken now, after Poincaré and Curzon's risky experiments. Who would dare deny that imperialism will have to pay dearly for the swinging of the bourgeoisie from pacifism to rabid imperialism and back again? That this is pushing vast masses of workers out of their habitual Philistine rut? That it is drawing the most backward sections of the proletariat into politics and is helping to revolutionize them? Of course, democratic pacifism is not yet the Kerensky regime, for the Kerensky regime implies dual power: the collapse of bourgeois power and the coming into being of the foundations of the proletarian power. But there can scarcely be any doubt that pacifism signifies the immense awakening of the masses. The fact that the masses are being drawn into politics, that pacifism is shaking bourgeois rule and preparing the ground for revolutionary upheavals. And precisely for this reason, pacifism is bound to lead not to the strengthening, but to the weakening of bourgeois rule, not the postponement of the revolution for an indefinite period, but to its acceleration. It does not, of course, follow that pacifism is not a serious danger to the revolution. Pacifism serves to sap the foundations of bourgeois rule. It is creating favorable conditions for the revolution. But it can have these results only against the will of the pacifists and the Democrats themselves. Only if the communist parties vigorously expose the imperialist and counter-revolutionary nature of the pacifist democratic rule. Okay, so something I'm thinking about here. No, it's good. No, this is all good. I think this is really important. So I feel like the most important part of this actually is this last thing. I love this. So I'm thinking about this in terms of Venezuela and in ICE, domestically and abroad. So the contradiction of liberalism is that slider we talk about. Where does your freedom to not be exploited by your boss begin, and your boss's freedom to not exploit you end? And that's the issue that cannot really be resolved through capitalism, through liberalism, right? Liberalism's promise of freedom is a lie. It's a myth. It can't offer you freedom because core to its existence is your exploitation, right? It cannot offer you liberation. So when we talk about pacifism as an idea, the contradictions within liberalism are getting exposed. So even if, for example, the Democratic Party is forced into domestic pacifism, they come up and they're like, you know what? We're doing away with ICE. We're getting rid of ICE. That is going to be their experiment in pacifism that they're going to be pressured into, right? Because of their contradictions. If they do it internationally, it's going to be on Venezuela. They're going to be like, okay, fine, we're giving up on Venezuela. And that's the pendulum swinging away from imperialism to pacifism. Okay, we're withdrawing from Venezuela, whatever. The pressure from the people. But that's ultimately going to serve to weaken them, right? So the thing that I think is most interesting about this is the idea of pacifism as a potentially radicalizing tool. And this is when I've talked to you guys about this week too, where I've been like, the anti-war movement is a potentially radicalizing tool. Bringing people into an anti-war movement, an anti-ICE movement, an anti-violence movement, that is a way to start to get people awakened. That's how I was first radicalized, the anti-war movement of the of the war on terror, the Iraq War, of the war on terror. So this is something that can potentially be good. And I think that's what they're talking about here, is that this idea of pacifism can be a recruiting tool that Stalin's talking about. This can be something to help wake people up, wake the masses up, because it does provide some sort of lackluster counterbalance to imperialism, but it is a counterbalance to imperialism nonetheless, right? And this is not something, this balance that the Democrats here in the United States, that liberals are going to be able to maintain, that capitalists are going to be able to maintain. They can't. They need imperialism to function, but they're going to be forced into adopting policies of this democratic pacifism domestically and internationally as a result of their own contradictions with the masses. But that's also an opportunity for the masses to get involved and interested and politically awakened and more politically conscious. So I think that's why right now I'm like, everybody needs to be pushed into anti-war. Hands off Venezuela, anti-war, anti-imperialism. We can't get them all to be communists overnight. But through the anti-war movement, through this kind of pacifist ideology, you can get them to really start to think about what imperialism is and like why this is all happening. So I think that is actually, sorry, I kept going because I was like, no, this cooks. This is it. We do need this passage. This is a great passage. And again, this is Stalin on concerning the international situation. And it was originally published in 1924. So love this. Okay, somebody has a question. If capitalists throughout history built the American education system and is constantly grooming new baby capitalists on a continuous loop, how can we keep up with the influx of groomed people who are also expanding the amount of people to educate? Yeah. Okay. Kind of feels like an endless rat race. And so I understand that feeling. And you're right. The American people in particular, but people everywhere, they're very indoctrinated by the ruling class. And that's why we talk about class consciousness and socialist education being really, really important. Game Boy, I'm going to look at your message in a sec too. So, I think that one of the things you have to remember is when population numbers are dwindling, and that also is a result of the contradictions of capitalism, people cannot afford to have children. Capitalism is really reaching a crisis stage internationally, and that is going to, one, create fewer people naturally, which say what you will, but two, also, it's going to basically continue to contradict until people have no choice but to become more conscious. Now, every single person is not going to become super politically literate, right? They're not all going to become the Marxist-Leninist vanguard party, but they don't need to be. Not everybody needs to be at this level of political consciousness or understanding. There are simple things that most people need to understand, though, right? Like capitalism is the source of your problems here. You're upset with capitalism. Imperialism is a part of capitalism. The wars that are being fought on television are all tied into it. It's all part of it, and it's all bad. And that there are 12 rich guys who want to kill us all so that they can buy 16 yachts. That's the kind of stuff the average person needs to understand. That's the extent of what we need the average person to understand. Now, we believe that inevitably this system will collapse because it is not sustainable. And when it collapses, that is our chance to try to build the future we want in its ashes. And that's what we're trying to do, right? We are trying to become politically literate enough to help build a future that we want in the ashes of this one. Maybe it's not us, maybe it's our children, maybe it's our grandchildren, who knows? But not every single person is obligated to fulfill that role. So I think that's what's important. And when people's everyday reality gets so bleak that they have no choice but to scoff at what they're being taught in schools because they know firsthand it's not real, it's a lot easier to convince people of this reality. And I think that's happening now. I see that happening here. It's my internet. I'm so sorry, guys. The internet monopoly. Speaking of. Game Boy said, I was reading a discussion on social media. 2 liberals were saying in Nazi Germany, the left did not ally with the liberals and led to Hitler taking power. I know this doesn't sound right, but I don't remember the history. Do you have any idea what they could have been referring to and what is historically accurate? You know what? I have actually read about this before. And I'm drawing a blank on what the source was that I could pull up so we could talk about this. I might need to ruminate on this, but this could be something we could talk about tomorrow because I do know there is a text that talks about this explicitly, and I know I've read it, but I can't remember what it's from. So Maybe that's something we could talk about tomorrow if you guys are okay, and then it'll give me a chance to try to remember what the source was on that and dig around a little bit. You're out of points. Okay, wait. Oh, here we go. Hold on. The SPD refused to ally with the left, and it armed the Freikorps. The SPD would only ally with the KPD and with the Spartacus lead if they made themselves fully subservient to the SPD's liberal agenda. They would not make a united front with the KPD and the Spartacus lead. Yeah. Okay, but do you remember like a source we could look at for that? Because this was my understanding as well, was more that it was like, not that leftists wouldn't ally. It was more that like liberals were like, we're going to do our feckless liberal thing. Yeah, the liberals wanted to make Hitler change. Exactly. This was my understanding too. That liberals were basically like, we're doing our thing. Get on board or shut up. Hildenanti. But I want to find just general knowledge of history. Right. Is what Trotsky was saying. Yeah, I feel like there is actually a good text about this though that I think I can dig up because that's like the pre-World War II kind of, I don't know if it's an era of history, but like the short buildup of time in Germany is not an area I'm even super versed on. So I must have, but that's something that I have a memory of. So I'm like, I must have read this in a text that's pretty like, here's a breakdown, boom, 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 that we could move forward from. So I want to try to find that because that is my understanding as well, was always that, not that the leftists didn't want to align, but that the liberals were like, here is the conditions of how we will handle this. And the leftists were like, this is nothing. This is a nothing burger. You are supporting this. Like, this does not fucking help us. What are you talking about? And that's what I had always come to understand. So I was like, but where did I learn that and from whomst? So yeah. And because that's not a period I'm as comfortable on, I would feel more comfortable with the document to back me up, so I wasn't just like freeballing. I'm like, and then this happened, and then I'm like, oh wait, I got that wrong. That's something I would need a document to talk about for sure. Fascism and Social Revolution, 1933 is a good book. Okay, everyone wants to shit on the third period because of the objectively correct social fascism line, but people always forget that the SPD armed the Freikorps. Yeah, okay. So we're not gonna do any streams this weekend. I'm so sorry. Saturday is my day to hang out with my partner, and also I'm petitioning for the Marxist-Leninist candidates on Vote Social, and then I have some commie stuff to do on Sunday, so I won't be around. But we can do it tomorrow, Friday morning. We can do it, and I'm gonna try to think about this text, and then also, if you think of anything, also Helden Auntie. She's calling you an auntie. I'm so sorry. I'm misreading everybody's names. That might be a good text for us to talk about for it. I think that would be good because I do think that's relevant to this conversation. The conversation of like, okay, so now fascism. So now what? What do we do? What's effective? What's working? Helden will do. Okay. Oh, what's working? What's not? Auntie Helden. That would be good for us, I think, to talk about. I would like that. Okay. The electronic intifada. Okay, we'll do that. We'll do them. I'm doing the electronic intifada. Oh, did you? Fuck. Okay. Sorry. I can't copy and paste in here. The electronic intifada. Okay. The electronic intifada. I'm spelling it right. Yes. I think I'm doing it, guys. I think I'm doing it. I am on X as Jean Grey. On Twitter. Oh, he was offline. That's why it didn't work. Oh. I'll show you my Twitter, just so you know it's actually me before we go. Hold on. This is me. All right. This is me on Twitter. This is the real me. I'm doing it. Oh, yay. Cool. Ginger Panda. Yay. There's a fake one? I have a fake one? Interesting. No, this is me. This one? Turtles better than cops. Yeah. That's it. That's a lore. Yeah. I post some things on there. Oh, you got Nick Twitch. Okay. Well, I'm going to raid the electronic intifada. Thank you, guys. Lovely day. And I love that supplemental materials were so great. Thank you. I think the Ramsey text is super relevant to us as well. And I do like this idea for a conversation tomorrow about the Nazi Germany thing. I feel like I'm going to try to see if I can dig around and find some stuff too. But some help would be great, Helen. Thank you. I appreciate you. Okay. Bye, everybody. Is it working? Stretch. Did it work? Did I do it wrong? I did it backwards? Guys, I think I did it backwards. Is it the other way? No. I need help. For the raid. Slash first. Slash raid. I did backwards. Ha ha! The electronic intifada. Ah! I did it. We're learning. Every day a little better. Every day a little better. Okay, guys. Bye. And